Hola mis amigos y bienvenidos a una lección sobre el subjuntivo con la emoción. As you see from the great variety of exciting emojis on the screen, there are so many different emotions that people can have. And emotion is very closely tied to subjunctive. Because remember, the subjuntivo is about things that are uncertain and unknown. And emotions are definitely something that can be uncertain, unknown. We don't know exactly how people feel all the time. We don't even know how we'll feel ourselves from one moment to the next, depending on the circumstances. So it's exciting to keep growing with your use of the subjuntivo as we get a little bit more specific about emotion and how it is tied to the subjuntivo. Let's first review what you should already be familiar with about subjuntivo. You might not know it perfectly, but this should be familiar. We know we need the following to use subjuntivo. ¿Verdad? You have to have que. You have to have a cambio de sujeto, a change of subject, and you have to have erin, which is my abbreviation for emotion, doubt, influence, negativity. I've brought all of this up in previous lessons and videos, but let it serve as a really important reminder that for now, you need all three of these things in order to use subjuntivo. So write this list down and keep it in front of you as we carry on with this lesson. Something else to keep in mind. We know that the standard setup for subjuntivo is like this. ¿Verdad? A normal verb, meaning a verb in the indicative, just the good old way you conjugated verbs like in Spanish 101 for the first time. So a normal indicative verb followed by que, and then the subjunctive. It's the second verb of the sentence that is in the subjunctive, at least for where we are now. More to come on this later, but for now, this is your classic setup for the subjuntivo. For example, quiero que vengas. The first verb is indicative, normal, then you have que. It's the second verb that's in the subjuntivo. Es importante que estudiemos. Same thing. Es, that's about as normal as it gets, indicativo, followed by que, and then the second verb in the subjuntivo. Bien. So if any of this makes you start thinking, how exactly do we make the subjuntivo? Let's review that really quickly. We know to make the subjuntivo like this. ¿Verdad? Take the O, drop the O, add the opposite ending, and make it agree. And when I say take the yo, I mean take the yo of the good old-fashioned present tense, the presente del indicativo. So take the yo of the presente, drop the o, add the opposite ending, make it agree. And just to jog your memory, the irregulars of subjuntivo, de, este, vaya, sepa, sea, haya. Those are the yo forms that should help to trigger your memory for it. So you might even remember me singing those at some point in time. De, este, vaya, sepa, sea, haya. De, este, vaya, sepa, sea, haya. You get the idea. Bien. All right, so now let's move on, and all we're going to do in this lesson really is just learn some more vocabulary. These are expressions that express emotion, so they require subjuntivo. We have alegrarse de, to be glad. It's a reflexive verb because it has se on it, so that's why I put an asterisk there just to remind you that it's reflexive. Esperar, to wait or to hope. Hoping definitely expresses emotion. Gustar, to be pleasing, that's a verb that you should have a good bit of experience with. And I put an asterisk there because gustar works according to its own formula. And I'll review some examples of that for you in a minute. Another verb that also works according to the gustar formula is molestar. Molestar means to bother, like to annoy somebody. It's not a cognate. Thank goodness, but close enough that I think that can jog your memory, that it's to bother or to annoy someone. Sentir means to feel or to regret. I included a reminder here for you that it is an E to IE stem changer in the present. That's where we get the expression lo siento from. I'm sorry. I regret it. Lo siento. Sorprender is to surprise. It also works like gustar and molestar, hence the asterisk. And temer, Temer is to fear. So for this slide, these are the expressions that we have so far. Just treat them as vocabulary. Try to chunk them in, maybe 3 or 4 at a time. Temer is to feel. Nothing to fear. Sorry. Nothing special about temer. It's a good old-fashioned regular verb. So in bringing in a few more, we have tener miedo de, to have fear. That's an old expression from Spanish 101. Certainly expresses emotion. Es extraño, it is strange. Es una lástima, it is a shame. Es ridículo, it is ridiculous. Es terrible, it is terrible. All these are very emotional, no? Es triste, it is sad. Ojalá, ojalá is a great expression. You can think of it as, oh, how I hope. It also translates as God grant that or Allah grant that. You can kind of hear the Allah part in the ojalá. That harkens back to the 7 centuries that the Moors spent in Spain and definitely influenced the language. We always treat ojalá as third person, like God grant that or Allah grant that, and you can use que with it or not, which is kind of cool that that option exists with ojalá. And it sounds cool. It's a great expression to use. Bien, hay que recordar some things I want you to keep in mind. Alegrarse. It's a reflexive verb. We studied reflexive verbs way back in Lección 7, so that's a place to flip back to if you want to review reflexive verbs. It's usually followed by de. Technically, it's optional, but I'm going to tell you this. The super site likes you to include de after alegrarse. So I'm putting that out there to help you out, save you some frustration. Un ejemplo, me alegro de que tú estés en mi clase. It's a reflexive verb. That's why the me is out in front of the verb. I told you about the de. You have to have que to use subjuntivo. And then estés is the subjunctive of estar. I am glad that you are in my class. You've got que, you've got change of subject, and you have the emotion of being happy. That's why subjuntivo is used. Mis padres se alegran de que yo saque buenas notas. You can kind of pull this one apart yourself and think about why the se is here, because it's reflexive. Have to have que for subjuntivo, and then here's your verb in the subjunctive, saque. Some more special verbs that I had put an asterisk by in the list that I just shared with you, gustar, molestar, and sorprender. All 3 of those require the use of an objeto indirecto. We learned about indirect objects back in lessons 6 and 7, if that's something that you want to go back to. And they kind of shake out in a sentence like this. A Juan le gusta que estudiemos el subjuntivo. It is pleasing to Juan, to him, this is kind of repetitive, that we are studying subjuntivo. Juan likes that we are studying subjuntivo. Similarly, a mí me molesta que unas personas sean perezosas. It is a bother to me. And then here you have your verb in subjuntivo, sean. Another example with one of those, a mis tíos les sorprende que podamos, there's your verb in subjuntivo, ding, 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 visitarlos. So slow down with this and take a pause and think some more about these examples if they're not coming together for you right away. Some of them take a little practice and thought. Bien. Bueno, entonces, more things to be thinking about. What if there is no change of subject? Well, we have a list of 3 things you need to use subjuntivo, and one of them is change of subject. So if there's no change of subject, there's no subjunctive. I always say to people, quit working so hard, eh? So if there's no change of subject, you should have a conjugated verb plus an infinitive. As in, I'm afraid I'll lose my keys. Temo perder mis llaves. Conjugated verb followed by an infinitive. In English, you could kind of think of that as I fear to lose my keys or I fear losing my keys. She hopes she can go. It's she and she, and it's the same she. So no change of subject. Espera poder ir. Literally, she hopes to be able to go. How funky is that? You've got a conjugated verb followed by 2 infinitives in a row. Yes, you can do that. Life is so exciting, isn't it? Me encanta. Bueno, and ojalá, as I mentioned before, it's optional to follow it with que. Ojalá todos entiendan esta lección. You've got the ojalá, and then you have subjuntivo. Ojalá mañana sea sábado. Oh, how I hope tomorrow is Saturday. So in both of these examples, I use the subjuntivo as the second verb, following ojalá. I left out the que. I could put it in if I wanted to. So that's just an option that you can be aware of. Bueno, unos ejemplos, some more full sentence examples. Me gusta que muchos jóvenes pasen tiempo afuera jugando. You can think through why subjuntivo is used here. Make sure you can check off the list in your head of the 3 things required for subjuntivo existing in this sentence. Same with, es extraño que unos no quieran ver el mundo. Profe Nessel wrote, se alegra de que mires este video. Can you explain to yourself why this se is here? Because that's a reflexive verb. Why this que is here? Because it's needed for subjuntivo. Why it's mires and no miras? Espero poder ver los paisajes hermosos de Chile un día. Here's a great example of an emotional sentence. I hope to be able to see the beautiful scenes in Chile one day, but it's not a change of subject because I hope that I can see them. So no change of subject, that's why there's no subjuntivo. I just had these infinitives lined up. Bien, now it's time for some practice. Bien, here are 5 sentences with blanks that you can fill in, checking your understanding of the subjuntivo that we have talked about so far. So pause the presentation and then you can check yourself. Here you have the correct answers for these. Llames, recuerde, sepa, ayuden, and veamos. Each and every one of these sentences has all 3 things required for subjuntivo. Each one has que, each one has a change of subject, and each one starts with a verb that expresses some kind of emotion. That's our big focus right now, emotion with the subjuntivo. Bien, so keep these things in mind as you carry on. I'm going to decline that call from my brother because you're more important right now. Bien. If you want to take this to the next step, you could make some observaciones sobre el medio ambiente. Bien. Create your own language using our current vocabulary and the subjuntivo. Here are some that I wrote. Me sorprende que unas personas no reciclen. I've got the que, I've got the emotion of subjuntivo. Here's my verb in the subjunctive, reciclen, okay? And there's change of subject from it surprises to unas personas. Otro ejemplo es una lástima que haya contaminación en las ciudades grandes. Haya is the subjuntivo of I. It's a shame that there is pollution in big cities. So you could write your own sentences like that will come in really handy with more things that we have coming down the road using the subjuntivo. Okay? And finally, I'll wrap up with this sentiment. Ojalá que tus sueños sean más grandes que tus miedos. Ojalá, oh how I hope, oh God grant that, oh Allah grant that, your dreams be bigger than your fears. Okay? And sean, ding, 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 is the verb in the subjuntivo. Bien, muchas gracias. Subjunctive is a work in progress. It's okay to have questions and doubts along the way. Keep at it, keep practicing, and let me know what questions you have and how I can help. Muchas gracias y hasta luego.